Morning, Mike. We're live, brother.
Woody. Hey, I don't know if I showed you this one, man. This is the Coolfire trainer that I put in. This is a little bit shorter. This is a smaller Beretta. It's not the 92G. This is the God, what is this? This is the Centurion, which is shorter. So the
Hmm.
barrel sticks out. I'm not sure if you can see the whole thing. The barrel sticks out
Yeah.
a little bit, but the Coolfire trainer works in that as well. So I have two converted Berettas. So we'll talk about this on the show today. So I know we're live, by the way. I don't know if anybody's on yet, but they'll be on here in a second. Man, what's new, dude? How's that coffee this morning?
Coffee is outstanding. I got
Oh,
13 folks joining us. This is a little coffee cup you can pick up over at the website, American Warrior Show, America's leading self defense podcast, of course.
wow. How do we know it's the America's leading self-defense podcast?
I just do what iTunes tells me, man.
Wow, I like that, man. All right, hey, if we're live, I'll get right into safety and cover that up front. And of course, folks, if you're joining us live, you're on probably one of the two Facebook pages, the American Warrior Society or Shooting Performance. Welcome. My name is Mike Seeklander. Of course, I'm assisted and joined today with Mr. Rich Brown, who will be throwing me questions and prompting me with things that I may not cover. So before we get going, of course, today we're talking about grip trigger sights. And before I get into the details of grip trigger sights and why they're important, obviously they're a fundamental. Let's talk about safety. If you're doing this with me and you're going to have a live firearm, please do me a huge favor. If you're dry firing, make sure right now that your firearm is unloaded. All safety rules apply. So make sure you have an unloaded firearm. Make sure you have no live ammunition in the area or the room you're in right now. Make sure if you're going to dry fire, you follow the four primary safety rules. Have a safe backstop. Make sure your backstop is nice and safe. Make sure you're keeping your finger where you need to keep your finger as you're practicing the training, because remember, dry fire or unloaded skills training translates to live training. So all of the four primary safety rules apply. And of course, one of those is backstop and beyond. In my case, I've got a nice safe wall backstop that goes into the edge of my brick house. And so make sure you're doing that as well. So if you don't comply with the safety rules, then Rich is going to click a safety rule button that he has on his computer, and it's going to boot you from the show. Just kidding. We don't have a safety rule button. Of course, we're talking about grip trigger sights, and Mr. Rich Brown is going to be feeding me some questions. Let's identify what I'm trying to cover today. So, when Rich teaches with me at some of my classes when they're very large, of course, we teach the FIDC class, which is the Firearms Instructor Development course, which hint, there is going to be some open enrollment courses this year. So if you're interested in that class, trust me, you will absolutely love it. But he teaches a lot of classes, and the subject we're going to talk about today is the single most important thing I can teach you in terms of shooting a handgun fast and accurately. We're going to be talking about the grip first, then we're going to dig into the trigger, then we're going to dig into the sights. It may seem fundamental and basic. It is, because that's the bottom line. That's going to allow you to shoot that much more accurate and fast. Of course, if you're just jumping on, Mike Seeklander, of course, joined by Mr. Rich Brown. If you are a coin member, do me a favor in the comment section, type your coin number. I'd love to know what your coin number is. And by the way, if you don't know what a coin member is, I know Rich is going to talk about that here in just a second, but there's a link in the show notes that you can click on. If you're like, what is a coin member? How do I get my challenge coin? Click that link after the show, or maybe now, and save it for later. And you can find all about the American Warrior Society and becoming a coin member. Of course, today, the material I'm covering is also covered in the Defensive Handguns Fundamentals Program or Competition Handgun Fundamentals Programs. You coin members already have access to those programs. So log in the vault and check them out. If you're not a coin member, you can check those out on my primary website. Of course, the link is in the show note as well. So, Mr. Rich Brown, how many people do we have on this morning? We have a lot of people on.
We have 43 on right now across two platforms.
Oh, man, I want
45 now.
100. We almost hit 100 last week, didn't we? Close.
Yes,
Your show
close.
almost hit 100. Hey, I'm not sure. Before we get into technique, can you see my eye? You asked about it. Look.
Yeah, what happened, bro?
Hey, what's this? Hey, this is called jujitsu, like 101, 102. My wife continually thinks I got my butt kicked, but this just means I'm out there. I'm battling it out. 50 years old, man. I'm getting on the mats and doing crazy stuff, right? Not just a shooter. See? Very, very diverse. So, hey, Rich, what kind of news you want to talk about before I jump into grip trigger and such? Anything you want to mention? Anything you want to promote or talk about for this coming show?
No, other than if you've if you're watching this morning, you're watching a replay, you're watching on YouTube channel, or maybe you're hearing this on a podcast and you still don't know what a coin number is, I would encourage you to point your browser over to AmericanWarriorSociety.com or just click in the show notes today and you'll find everything you need to find out if becoming a coin member is the right decision for you. And you know what makes a really good stocking stuffer is a membership to somebody you love. You don't have to pick up a membership for yourself. You got that son or daughter that's away at school or heading back to college at the end of the semester. You can always hook them up with a membership to the American Warrior Society.
Hey, folks, two more things before we get going. If you would do me a favor, click share and hit that like button a couple times. If you could, if you are a member on Facebook or whatever else to a group that maybe we're not part of, please share it there. I know a bunch of you shared the last time we were live and probably every time we're live. I know I saw all of the shares in the Training Addicts group and the American Coin Members group, as well as the ACSS group. So thank you. Please go ahead and share it in there as many times as you want to. That's going to bring more members on. Also, if you're a member of other groups, click that share button. We'd like to get the numbers up as much as possible before we begin, because I'm talking about something that's so important. It's going to make everybody that's watching this a better shooter if you simply apply these principles. So it's super easy. Now, I do have a couple things I want to talk about real quick. Of course, I promised last week that I would show off my carry type holster. This is the new Precision Holsters Ultra Appendix holster. This is the Seeklander signature line. So I wanted to show you, this on video real quick. And a comparison to the normal holster. This is one of the branded Wilson Combat holsters that you would get through Wilson Combat's website. And of course, you can see the signature line has a little bit different design feature. I love it. I worked with John at Precision Holsters to do the signature line. It's of course Kydex. All the features of the holster are the same. The look and appearance, though, has that lovely subdued flag, that beautiful flag with the United States of America, which is why I picked that as my signature line. We also have some of the signature line design features on the new Fast Competition holster. So this is actually one of my Carry Optics 1911 holsters. This one is set up for IDPA, hence the Tech Lock system. So anyways, not to get too deep into the weeds on gear, because last week's discussion was on gear. If you haven't watched that, please go ahead and watch that. So check that out. Secondly, I am going to be using a Coolfire trainer, right? One of the two show sponsors for today. The Coolfire trainer is very unique. I'm actually going to show you that up front here in just a second. Basically, the Coolfire trainer comes in a box like this, and you get two simple things. Number one, you get a barrel to replace the barrel in your handgun, right? And then you get a recoil spring. And the recoil spring is a little bit lighter weight than the standard recoil spring that you would find in your firearm. And once you replace the barrel and the recoil spring, you end up with a Coolfire trainer kit. So if you can see, this Beretta is converted to a Coolfire trainer. You can see Coolfire written, there on the barrel. I'm not sure if you can read that on the video camera, but that shows me that this is a safe firearm because, of course, the red barrel, and I could train with this inside the house or whatever else. Coolfire is like dry fire on steroids, if you haven't seen the Coolfire product. When we're doing this, of course, I'm going to double check and make sure it's a Coolfire barrel. If you're wondering, well, Mike, how does this sucker work? Basically, there's a striker in the end of the barrel. So when your firing pin hits the striker cycles because of compressed CO2 in the barrel itself. So let me actually give you a visual demonstration, and then we're going to get right into grip, trigger, and sights. So to fill the Coolfire barrel up, all I'm going to do is going to take, this is a Tipman, like a paintball canister of compressed CO2. I fill the barrel up, then when I pull the trigger, I get gas coming out of the gun and cycling the slide. It's literally like felt recoil. So when I'm doing my dry fire drills, if I'm working on my grip, trigger, sights, and I fire that shot, now I truly have to grip the handgun as hard as I can to control the recoil. So that facilitates some recoil. And guess what? I can do it in my beautiful room, my office. I could stand up and do 50 reps of dry fire, single-handed, extend, prep, and press, whatever I'm working on. And anyways, the Coolfire trainer is the cat's meow. Of course, there are links to the Coolfire trainer and everything that we offer and promote or like to use on a couple different sites, but you can go to American Warrior Show, which is our podcast site, and go from there. So let's talk about grip, trigger, sights. And the first thing I want to talk to you about is grip mechanics. And the reason I'm going to talk to you about grip mechanics in this order, we'll talk about grip mechanics first, and then I'm going to talk about managing the trigger. And then last, we'll talk about the sights or the aiming process. And the reason we're doing this in this order is because the order is the order of importance as well. Understand that if you build a good grip on the handgun, right? If you learn what a good grip on the handgun is, you can mess up the trigger pull and probably not necessarily mess up, but not worry as much about the aiming process. Because here's the reality. And let me turn on my comments so I can see what some of you are saying. When we miss a shot with a handgun, oftentimes it's a result of us moving the gun, right? Most shooters don't miss a shot because they don't know how to aim. Now, I do periodically have students that don't know how to aim, and there's some tests that we do in our FIDC course so we can test their ability to aim. But the reality is most shooters miss shots because they haven't established a good grip and maintain a good grip. So we're going to talk about that first. Now, in terms of gripping the handgun, there's some things I want you to focus on, right? Whenever we're talking about grip, we talk about placement and pressure. And by the way, if you're just jumping on, I don't know how many folks we have on right now. Do me a favor, if you know someone that might enjoy this show, send them a text message. Tell them to go to Facebook and go to Shooting Dash Performance or American Warrior Study and jump on and join us. I know some of those shares in the groups don't always go out because Facebook probably throttles us back a little bit. So do me a favor and click the share button and get some more folks on here. Also, if you have a question, go ahead and throw it up there. Rich will pick those questions up, and the most important ones he'll start to feed back to me during the show. By the way, if you can't see Mr. Rich Brown, he's there somewhere. He's probably muted, but there he is. Hey, look at his smiling little face, right? So let me talk to you about grip mechanics first. And I have several guns here. I have an iron-sighted gun. I have an optic-sighted gun. I have several guns with different grip sizes. So we're going to talk about the grip mechanics, on for example, a Beretta like this versus a 1911 style system versus maybe a smaller grip, and then we'll go from there. Okay. So number one, the first step in establishing our grip is getting our strong hand on the handgun, assuming we're shooting with our strong hand. Now, when I'm driving my strong hand onto the handgun, I'm always attacking the gun from the rear, right? That's one of the things we'll talk about when we eventually get to the draw process, which I think is not next week's live stream, but the following week's live stream, maybe the one right before Christmas. But when I'm drawing the handgun, in a competitive holster or a defensive holster, I'm always attacking the gun from the rear. So I'm literally attacking the gun from the back of the grip, and I'm driving my hand up the grip panel. And if I've done my job with my strong hand, you're going to get two indications. And by the way, if you have an unloaded handgun with you, go ahead and grab it and do some of the things that I'm talking about while I'm doing them. But the indicator that I've done this right and I'm gripping the handgun properly with my strong hand is that I'm going to feel some pressure, between the middle knuckle and the trigger guard of my handgun, right? So I'll feel pressure right there. And I will also feel pressure between the web of my hand, right, and the tang or the beaver tail area of the firearm itself, right? So if I feel pressure between my hand and that point and pressure between my middle knuckle and that point, I've probably driven the hand nice and high up the handgun like I should, okay? Now you'll notice when I do this, I'm flagging the thumb. Here's the deal. I won't tell you why I'm flagging the thumb. Let me ask this, and for especially those that are COIN members or ACSS members, why am I flagging the thumb? Who can answer that question? Well, I take a sip of my coffee, and I'm not going to tell you.
Can I answer? Can I?
No, Rich, you can't answer. You can feed me questions you can't answer. Go ahead. Who knows why I'm flagging my thumb? Why is that critical? And I have a second question. Maybe we'll cover later on. Do I flag the thumb when I only shoot with one hand? And by the way, I just gave you a hint. Maybe, right? Let's see if we have some answers. Hey, there's Chris from Berryville, Arkansas. Hi, Chris. Chris is probably sharing this all over the IDPA page. Chris was my coordinator when I went live on the IDPA page, which we should do that, Rich. I bet Chris would get that approved if we go live on our pages and IDPA as well. I bet you anything she would probably be happy with that. We'll have to talk to Chris about that. Chris Schmid, message Rich Brown if you would. So there we go. I see a couple of answers. Rich, looks like they know that get your support hand, palm on the back strap, make room for your left hand. Okay, yeah, they get it. Members are following it. That means they've actually watched some of the videos in the members area. I love that. So yeah, the whole point of flagging that thumb is so I can get my support hand on the gun, right? We talked about the strong hand. Now, in terms of the support hand, the indexing happens right here, right? This is always the first point of contact for my support hand grip, which means that if I figure out, and this is a key consideration, this is super easy for you. And by the way, I see Ruben jumping on. Good morning, Ruben. Nice to see you, man. That's awesome. I love that. Amador Group is in the house, Rich. So if I figure out this index point, like literally where I'm indexing and touching this support hand finger, assuming my hand's not still growing, my hand will naturally wrap around into a perfect grip. And if you look at my full grip on the handgun, my two hands fit together like pieces of a puzzle, right? So when we're building that perfect grip, we always talk about placement and pressure, placement and pressure. So you have to make sure your handgun is in the right place. That's placement. And then pressure comes secondly. So if I have the right placement of my hands, I won't have any gaps, and I'll have a position with my grip where both hands are in contact with the gun as much as possible, and that allows me to put pressure on the gun. So let's talk about pressure in the gun. Number one, when you grip the handgun as hard as you can. And I want to give you a visual demonstration. I'm actually going to switch to the SIRT pistol. This is a non-firing demonstration tool. Some of you FIDC graduates will remember that term, right? And if you can see with the SIRT, there's a prep and a press laser, right? So a couple things about handgun pressure. I want you to remember these principles. Number one, grip the gun as hard as you can without shaking. So when I'm gripping the handgun, I'm gripping the gun as hard as I can without a tremor. Okay. Number two, once you grip the handgun fully, that means as hard as you can without tremoring, you're never allowed to decrease the pressure. If you find that you're not controlling recoil, you can increase the pressure, but you're never allowed to decrease the pressure, because decreasing the pressure means when we fire that shot, okay, and then we decrease the pressure and then we regrip the handgun, we start to move the handgun as we're firing. That's actually a pretty good demonstration. I don't know if I could point the laser at my camera. That's a pretty fancy camera right there. I don't want to ruin my camera. So principle number one, grip the gun really hard without tremoring. Principle number two, once you grip the gun, you're never allowed to relax these fingers, okay, and decrease the grip pressure. And I will tell you, those of you that are having trouble, those of you that have students that are having trouble, they're shooting low left for a right-handed shooter, low right for a left-handed shooter, are doing this. Okay, I'm exaggerating for the video, but that's what you're doing. You're not jerking the trigger. You're messing up the grip process, okay? Mr. Rich Brown, what do we have in way of questions? And I see, wow, look, Phil Strader's on as well. That's so nice. Phil Strader's on as well. Any questions that stand out right now that Rich and I missed on the comments?
There's one question, Mike, from John. It says, question, when getting master grip on a 1911, is it wrong to thumb the hammer?
When getting a master grip on the 1911, is it wrong to thumb the hammer? So if I'm understanding John's question correctly, and I might not, I don't know what thumbing the hammer is. I would assume what you mean by thumbing, I don't know. By the way, this is my EDC X9 Wilson comment. I wanted to bring an optically, is that the correct word, right? Rich, what's right? Anyways, Rich is my grammar correction coach. What's the correct word? Optically sighted handgun, unloaded and clear. So, John, if I understand your question, I would assume, what I hope you don't mean is when you're gripping the handgun that we're thumb cocking the hammer. If you're doing that in a 1911, that's a no-go. I can say that definitively. That's going to be a no-go. There would be no reason for the hammer to be forward. A 1911 system is safest and designed to be carried cocked and locked, right, Rich? The second thing, maybe you're talking about thumbing the hammer, is when you're drawing the handgun, you actually thumb check that hammer. Remember, thumb checking is a process oftentimes of reholstering a striker-fired handgun, right? Potentially a hammered-fired handgun in the holster, but it's not a method of drawing. Meaning, if I'm thumb checking the holster, John, if I'm misunderstanding, type your question again. My hand is not in contact with where I want to be. So once I grip the handgun in the holster, I'm gripping like this. The hand flags, or the thumb flags, it's above the safety, so I'm in that position. And as John probably remembers, when I'm building my second hand grip, I'm already wiping the safety off as the second hand contacts the trigger guard, because I want my left hand to be able to rotate under the safety, the thumb safety itself, without me having an issue and actually preventing myself from being able to wipe that thumb safety off, okay?
Mike, we got 78 folks joining us live. John clarified his question. He said, sorry, when getting a master grip in the holster, thumb the backstrap hammer in the holster.
Yeah, so John, no, let me be specific on that. So on a on a non-hammered fired system, to verify that the slide is forward, there are instructors that teach a thumb check. As a matter of fact, Rich will do a thumb check in his holstering process because on his Glock, he has a striker control device, or I think it's called a striker. Rich, remind me of the name.
Striker control device by
Right?
Tal
And
Development.
basically what happens is when you pull the trigger, there's a small flap that comes up on the back of the gun. So when he thumb checks, he does two things. He keeps the slide forward, right? And on a decocking system, like for example, a SIG 229 that I carried in the Air Marshals, we would decock, thumb check, and make sure the hammer was forward. And I didn't always put my thumb on the back of the hammer. Sometimes it was on the side of the hammer when I reholster. That has nothing to do with the draw process. So there's no reason to be thumb checking as you're drawing the handgun. So when I'm drawing the handgun, I'm driving the hand high on the pistol grip itself. Strong hand thumb is flagged, but it's not thumb checking the hammer. So for example, John, on your 1911, I would not be drawing the handgun like this and having the thumb on the hammer. You'll never have a good draw if you do that. Right. Or if you do, if you're doing it in a manner that I've never taught or seen in my past. Okay. Hey, by the way, we're almost at 100. So if you all just take one pause, please, we're so close to 100. Rich and I have had 100 viewer goal for like 2 months now. Back in the day, we used to have hundreds of viewers live stream. Click share if you would, please, right now. And then I'll get into this. I'm going to talk about the secret of the day.
Secret? Oh, I gotta stick around for this.
It's going to be good, Rich. It's going to be a good secret, man. Good morning, by the way.
And what if the folks that are just joining us, they're curious about what did the truck hit your face? What happened there? That pretty face of yours.
Well, I'll tell you, if you look at my face, I got a black eye kind of right there and a black eye right there, right? And let's just say I fell down the stairs, Rich.
I think that's jujitsu, bro.
I fell down the stairs. I lost my balance.
I don't think so.
Oh, if you saw the beasts at the 8 a.m. class, you would understand. Maybe some of them are watching right now. Probably not. Hey, by the way, I see a bunch of people on. Edward Davies, he's from Fort Bragg, California, which is a beautiful little town that we're going to have. We're going to go do a class in Fort Bragg next year.
All right.
Rich Brown. Maybe I'll take you to that. Ruben of the Amador group is on. That's awesome. Eric is on. Phil Strader's on. Maybe Phil Strader will get off his fat butt and share this in the 6 Hour group. How about that, dude?
Mike, Phil wants to practice his grip around your neck, bro.
Yeah, I'm right here, man. Nothing but air and opportunity. All right, so I'm not going to get distracted by Phil Strader. Do me a favor, please share. I would love to hit 100. If we hit 100 today, I will probably do a backflip, right? Yeah, and Tiny, I slipped in the shower, right? All right, so let me get back to talking about the grip process. So we talked about placement. We talked about pressure. So when you're gripping the gun hard, you should not have a tremor. But one of the single things that I would say, if I were to give you a statistic, right, which is one of the elements of emotional appeal, I would tell you that honestly, I believe 90 to 95% of my students could probably grip the gun harder. The reason I say that is oftentimes I find myself under gripping the handgun. So if I've been shooting for about 30 years and I log my training this year on live fire, I'm at 33 or 4,000 rounds, and that's a low estimate. I'm probably closer to 40,000 rounds. I find myself under gripping the handgun. So if you're watching this, Facebook Live, YouTube, on the replay area later on, grip your gun harder. So let me talk about a specific pressure area. So when I'm gripping the gun hard, I'm going to show you this triangle from an inverted angle. I want you to watch the palms of my hands. I've never actually shown this like this on camera. I think it's pretty impressive. When I extend my hands and build my full grip, I'm taking the palms of my hands and I'm crushing the back of the gun. So the strong hand is already on the back of the gun. You can see that, right? But because my support hand is flagged, this facilitates and opens up the other side of the gun, which allows me to get my support hand into place and crush the back of the gun. So I'm taking my hands and I'm counter-rotating my hands together like this. Let me go ahead and remove the gun, right? I'm taking my hands and I'm counter-rotating my hands and pushing them into the back of the gun. That is one of the single best pressure tips I can give you on the grip, because what that does is that applies pressure to the back of the gun. Now, if the gun is recoiling and returning like this, that increase of pressure in the back of the gun, high in the back strap and on the back, is going to allow us to control recoil with a little less grip strength. So for those of you that are not as strong in terms of your grip, because we all have varying strength levels, it's really important you understand that where and how you're applying pressure is very, very important as well. Okay. And by the way, I think we hit 82 or 90 viewers, which is awesome. Maybe we'll actually hit 100 degrees. I see Rick says it's -5 in North Dakota this morning. Holy crud, Rick. Where are you at in North Dakota? I grew up in Hazleton, North Dakota, by the way. Rick Sandwick says that. All right, Mr. Rich Brown, any other critical questions on pressure replacement so far?
Not right now. We got viewers on this morning from Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you, Walt. We got folks on from the Philippines, folks on from Canada, North Dakota, all across this great state, United States of ours. So thank you to the 87 folks that was on a moment ago.
Cool.
We really appreciate you being on with us.
Outstanding. All right, so here's the deal. We've talked about grip control, and I'm going to segue into trigger control. And I will tell you that when we talk about trigger control, I think one of the biggest lies in firearms instructorship or instructor world on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, and you got to, folks, if you're watching this live, let's go call out some of the fakers that don't know what they're talking about. They'll say, hey, you missed a shot because you jerked the trigger, right? You jerked the trigger, which means you missed the shot. By the way, if you see that slide cycle and you're wondering if I shot a hole, I said, no, that's the Coolfire trainer. Probably the coolest thing since sliced bread. So the point there is, if I am jerking the trigger, but I've established a perfect grip. So right now I'm aiming directly in the center of the camera, and I pull the trigger as fast as I can, right? There might be some slay gun movement, but that bullet is going to go directly in the center of what I'm trying to shoot at. However, if as I'm pulling the trigger, I've moved my supporting fingers, right? And I'm going to slow this down as I'm going through this double action trigger pull. Now I'm gripping with my supporting fingers. What happens to the gun? Watch it again. I'm gripping with my supporting finger. So if you were going to remember something, here's what I would tell you to tell your students to remember. Good trigger control is good grip control. Once we learn to grip with these 3 supporting fingers and then maintain that pressure, we can do almost anything we want with the trigger, right? We can pull it very aggressively, which is what you want to do, right? Think about this. If you're watching this right now, none of you want to pull the trigger slow unless you want to be slow, but you're probably not watching this because you want to be slow. You want to be really accurate and you want to be really fast. And you can't be really fast. Oh man, sorry, bummed my camera. You can't be really fast if you pull the trigger slow. Think about that for a second. You can't be really fast if you pull the trigger slow. To be really, really fast, you have to pull the trigger fast, right? Okay. And Rich, there are 2 elements to the trigger. Do you have a question you want to feed me, or do you want me to talk about those?
I do, but I have a question, and I want you to break down this whole. A lot of folks that are watching this morning, this is defensive handgun, and they're thinking, Mike keeps talking a lot about speed, but I've heard that every round that I fire has my business card attached to it. I'm responsible for it. So what's all the speed you keep talking about? Why is it relevant to a defensive context? If you could discuss that. And also, John has a question. He said, should I be pulling with my support hand to tighten the grip?
Yeah, so let's talk about context first. One of the things, Rob Latham and I do a great job in our bigger circle concept, the class we teach together. There's a video series. In that class, we talk about the fact that when we say speed, don't hear what your brain is thinking, hear what my words are telling you. When I say speed, I'm talking about effectively utilizing technical components to fire and hit the spot I'm trying to hit as fast as I can, right? So if you're fighting me and the combat effective hit on me, in theory, is maybe a 6 or 8 inch circle, upper center chest, where vital organs are, and you have to defend yourself against me, when I'm talking about speed, which is a byproduct of a proper grip, proper trigger management, proper sights, and of course the manipulations of the handgun, I'm talking about the ability to hit that spot as fast as you can. I'm not talking about shooting fast and hoping for hits. We don't ever do that, by the way. If you're watching my little beautiful face on this live stream, we don't ever shoot fast and hope for hits. That never happens. It doesn't happen in matches. It doesn't happen in defensive scenarios. In a defensive context, those of you that are thinking about defending yourself, though, have more of an ownership, because I can go to a match and I can't shoot fast and hope for hits, and I can get away with that. They're not going to kick me out of the match. I'll just have a crappy score. In the defensive world, though, like Rich said earlier, you own every single bullet you send down range, right? So, the ability to understand how to get hits fast is critically important, okay? Now, John's question, should I be pulling with my support hand grip? Now, John, you know the answer to this, man, right? I'm grippy. So if I were to describe what I'm feeling, right now I'm gripping the gun hard with both hands, right? But because, and I see John Dalton from Arizona, coin 651. That's an older coin number, John. Welcome to the show. When I'm gripping the handgun, I have basically set my grip up and hooked with these three fingers. So when I'm extending the handgun, now I'm taking the palms of my hands and I'm pushing them in the back of the gun. And if I have the appropriate grip pressure on the handgun grip itself, and I've locked my elbows and my shoulders, this is a very rigid stance, by the way. It's not a loose stance. There's no room for being relaxed and loose on a handgun grip if you're trying to shoot fast and accurately. So I'm not necessarily pulling the hand in, John, but I am hooking with these three fingers, which facilitates and allows me to drive the palm of my support hand into the back of the gun. And of course, the palm of my right hand, or my strong hand, is already driven to the back of the gun itself. Okay, so hopefully that answers that. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Gordon, I don't know if I buy that one, man. Slow is slow and slow is slow. That's really the truth there, to be honest with you.
Got another question from Billy.
Yeah,
He says,
let's do it.
He says, would you agree that in most offensive uses of the trigger, the accelerated pull will be used as opposed to the prep and press?
Well, so before I answer your question, Billy, let's define the two different managements methods of managing the trigger. Okay, so when we talk about accelerated and controlled, understand that there's a spectrum of trigger pulling that starts here and ends here. This might be an extremely easy shot. This might be an extremely hard shot. But I have two different terms in those areas that I've defined in pulling the trigger. Matter of fact, I don't know if Mr. Phil Strader's on, but the original concept, the original term came from a discussion when he and I were literally sitting in a motel room after a class, and we were trying to figure out how to name and describe the trigger methods to our students the next day. And we came up with ACP and CCP, accelerated competition pull, controlled competition pull. So an accelerated competition pull is literally, if you watch my trigger finger, where I'm accelerating right through the trigger, right? A controlled competition pull was where we're prepping, going to the prep point and pressing the trigger, right? And you're right, Phil, we probably were having a beer in the hotel room. Later on, I said, well, I don't need to call it competition. An accelerated pull or controlled pull is definitive or maybe acceptable in defensive or competitive context. It doesn't matter. So, an accelerated pull is one where the shot is so easy, we're simply accelerating through the trigger as fast as we can. We're just hammering the trigger. And by the way, to answer your question, Billy, I completely agree. And if you look at any video footage, which is rare, it's hard to see some of the trigger fingers, but if you watch how people shoot when they're stressed out, in simunitions, in the few gunfight videos I've seen, described by some of the guys that have been in lots of different fights, if you see folks in a match or a competition, when they say, well, I prep and I reset to the click, nobody does that. Not a single one of them do that. That's a complete and utter lie. If they tell you they do that, they don't do that when they're shooting fast. Maybe when they're shooting super slow, but when you're stressed out, you're not going to shoot super slow. So I agree. That accelerated pull is absolutely probably going to be utilized in a lot of circumstances. That said, a control pull is one where I take that trigger, I take the slack out and prep the trigger, and I press to the rear. Now, here's the question for the group, though. This is more of an advanced question, Rich. If I am using a controlled pull and I'm prepping the trigger and pressing, so every time I fire a shot, I prep the trigger and press it, prep the trigger and press it, prep the trigger and press it. Let me show you that from the front, actually kind of a side view. So I prep, that's a better view. I prep the trigger and press it, prep the trigger, press it, prep the trigger, press it, prep the trigger, press it. Okay, I can't say it as fast as I can do it. Why am I prepping the trigger? There's a question, Rich, you can't answer. Anybody else can answer. If you're a coin member, you should be able to answer this. If you're a graduate of the bigger circle class, like John Renan is, you should be able to answer that question. Why am I prepping the trigger?
Phil Strader knows.
Phil Strader. No, you're not allowed to answer, Phil Strader. He's the only one else that can't answer. Will Parker says, to verify alignment. Will Parker, expand on that, please. I want you to give me more details. I want to get into the nitty-gritty details here. And then we'll do some Q&A. Corbett says, to take up the slack. Eric says, while fighting for alignment for a harder shot. I like where you're going with that, Eric. I like what you're saying. So here, I think we have the answer, right? So here's the deal. If I am prepping the trigger, there's only one reason I'm prepping the trigger. That's because it's taking more time to verify the alignment of the gun. Remember this. There are only 3 things you have to do to hit a shot with a handgun. You have to stop the gun on target as much as needed, and that's a very specific statement. Number 2, you have to verify the alignment of the handgun as much as needed. Once again, that's a specific statement. And then number 3, you have to fire the gun without moving it out of the area you're aiming at, right? I said that in a very specific manner because there are details in those 3 mini statements. But the bottom line is, if the shot is hard enough where it requires additional aiming, right? So I'm continually trying to, align the front and rear sight. If it requires the time for me to additionally fight for alignment, like Eric said, right, then during that time, I might as well do something on the trigger that will make the shot easier to fire. And I hadn't actually thought about it that way and termed it that way, to be honest, until Rob Latham and I started teaching, and I'm like, that's a great way to say it. I'm prepping the trigger because I'm still utilizing the time. So on a really hard shot, let's say I'm trying to aim, I'll give you an example. On my camera, there's a teeny tiny blue light right there, right? So on an easy shot, if I were trying to aim at the whole camera, I could fire the shot pretty quickly. If I were trying to hit that blue spot on the camera, I would stop the gun on target. Notice how you see the laser onto my gun because I prepped the trigger. Because once I stop the gun, I'm fixing and fighting for alignment of the sights, and then finally I would fire that shot. So I would prep the trigger, I would press that shot. Understand what you might see is me going prep, stop on the trigger, and then press. I'm actually going prep and press. Finally, the gun goes off. And notice when I fired that shot, this is actually kind of a cool demonstration tool. When I fire that shot, I prep the trigger, I fight for alignment, I fire that shot, boom, I reset right away. So notice the second dot, the second laser. By the way, if you're a coach and you don't have a SIRT pistol or a Coolfire trainer, where's my Coolfire trainer? These are 2 of the best tools you could have as an instructor. So firearms instructors, if you're watching this, you don't have these 2 tools, get them. We have some discount codes on video. So the point there is I'm automatically resetting for the next shot, right? Okay. And then I'm trying to minimize the movement of the fingers. Okay.
We got a good question here from Walt.
Yep.
He says, do you allow your finger to leave the trigger after each press while resetting, or do you go only as far as the trigger reset point, riding to the reset point?
Yeah, great question. Let's talk about that, because that is probably the second biggest lie out there in the internet. Now, understand, there are different trigger pulling distances from different shooters. So, for example, if you were to watch Rob Latham and I pull the trigger, you might see, I'm going to give you a really good angle, you might see me pull the trigger every time, and I'm actually, let me get even closer. Can you see that? So I'm firing, I'm resetting as fast as I can, but I'm coming off the trigger. I'm going beyond the reset point. You might see, if you watch Phil Strader's trigger finger, he might ride a little bit closer to that reset, which is also, of course, why he has a harder time finding a trigger weight and trigger setup that works well for him. The problem with trying to ride, or first of all, we never ever fire a shot and pin the trigger to the rear, waiting for something else to happen. Because if you're doing that, you're wasting time and you're going to be slow. If you want to be fast, don't do that. If you want to be slow, do that. Pin the trigger to the rear. So let me say that again. If you want to be slow, keep pinning the trigger to the rear. If you don't want to be slow, don't do that. Because once you've fired that shot, there's nothing left to do in the trigger. There's no follow through. There's nothing that's needed with a handgun. Your follow through process should be immediately resetting to the next shot. Does that make sense? So when I'm doing that, I'm firing that shot, I'm immediately resetting the trigger for the next shot. Okay. Now, how far you reset, that's the key question. So if I hold the trigger to the rear, and then just try to reset to the click, that would seem very fast because the distance is shorter. Yes, I would agree with that, but I can tell you at speed that's very, very difficult to do. So when I'm resetting, I don't care how far I go forward. All I care about is I get the trigger reset as quickly as possible, and I'm ready to fire the gun again as quickly as possible. Now, a lot of folks, or some people, to include me, we're getting some deep stuff, by the way, folks. This is great stuff that I haven't put on the live stream before. I would have said in the past, I'm resetting during the recoil of the handgun. Nobody can do that. Nobody's that fast. The handgun cycles in hundredths of a second. If you do a slow-mo video of your trigger finger, no one can do that. I don't care what they tell you, they're lying, okay? But I am resetting as quickly as I perceive the gun fire. So I know, boom, I feel the gun move in my hand. That's the first thing I feel. And of course, then I see and I hear the noise of the recoil. I'm immediately seeing I'm immediately resetting the trigger. I am not holding the trigger to the rear. And you'll never hear my trigger click. Matter of fact, I don't know if you can even hear it on this one. Let me gas this bad boy up. I don't know if the noise of the Coolfire cycling is enough, but if you listen to my trigger pull, so you don't hear a click. You hear me firing the gun, but you don't hear a click. Where if I pin the trigger, I'm going to pin the trigger this time. Now listen. Hear that click? But when I'm firing the gun, you don't ever hear the click because during the pop of the slide cycling, I'm already moving my finger and resetting it, if that makes sense. Okay? Man.
Yeah, I think some people, they think, well, I had trigger freeze.
Yeah.
Trigger freeze, you're just trying to ride that trigger, man. That's what I've found.
That's right. If you are a victim of trigger freeze, it's because you have not learned to release the trigger. Okay. Yeah, Phil Strader said exactly right. That's exactly right. Only use the prepping if you're past 25 yards. Matter of fact, the best shooters, as you get better and better and better, we find ourselves prepping less and less and less. Here's a question for the group watching right now. How many people do we have on right now? Do we still have a lot, or are people going to work? I hope.
No, man, we got 83 folks watching.
83. It's fucking awesome. Did we hit 100? Come on.
No, 92 or 97. I can't remember. Real close.
Hey, Phil Strader, send this live stream to your email list at SIG right now, please. I'll wait. So here's the deal. What was I about to say? Oh, yeah. Okay. So the better you get at shooting, the less prepping you need to do. Because ultimately, the shooting wheel is all on the grip. So if at 25 yards, I can pull the trigger like this, it's going to be faster than doing this. You can watch it. Which is faster? Or this? It's obvious, right? So the better grip you have on the handgun, right? And the more you learn to isolate and lock these supporting fingers down, the better you're going to be able to shoot and move the gun less. We all move the gun all the time. Even Phil Strader. Rob Latham moves the gun all the time. The better shooters move the gun less. Okay?
So, Mike, I've heard you talk a lot about speed and stuff like that, but I don't know that I've heard you say this morning rule number 1 and rule number 2.
What's rule number 1 and rule number 2, Rich?
Rule number 1, always get your hits.
Get your hits.
And rule number 2?
If we were going to do a drill, we would tell you, hey, whatever the acceptable hit is. I'll give you an example. Sorry, had to walk off camera there for a second. So if an acceptable hit is the A zone in a competitive target, or maybe the upper center chest for a defensive type circumstance, that's an acceptable hit. So if you're doing a drill, I'll give you a great example. The first drill or the second drill in my fundamentals program, that's also in the defensive handgun training program you Quinn members have access to, is the extend, prep, or press. Extend, prep, or press, because what I have you do is alternate from the body to the head. So the head shot is a harder shot. It may require that you prep the trigger because you need to verify the alignment of the handgun, which we're already talking about the aiming process, by the way. The body does it, but the point is, if you're not hitting that area, you don't have the ability to mechanically hit that area, there's no reason for you to try to go faster. But let's say you do hit that with that 1-shot drill or the 5-shot pace drill that we do later on. Okay, then on your second repetition of the drill, go faster. So get your hits, then go faster. And if you got your hits again, go faster again. If you got your hits, go even faster, right? And then,
But then I'll start missing, Mike.
Well, if you start missing, what should you do? Think about this for a second. If you missed the shot, what happened? You violated one of the three primary things. The gun wasn't stopped on target, you didn't verify alignment, or you didn't keep it in the aiming area that you're trying to hit. So all you have to do in your training drills is analyze and figure that out. What caused the movement of the gun? Was it your wrist? Was it your fingers? Was it the other hand? Was it the fact that you weren't truly aiming precisely enough to hit the shot you're trying to fire? Because at 60 yards or 50 yards or 40 yards or 30 yards, those all require different sight alignment mechanics. So I'll give you a great little analogy. I did a walk back drill with my kid the other day. He beat me at 105 yards. What do you think we needed to see on the handgun at 105 yards? We had to see extreme alignment, right? So it's all based on what you're trying to accomplish, okay? So, and the last thing I want to talk about is the aiming process, right? The aiming process is all a matter of you verifying alignment. Here's another thing we've done probably wrong as instructors. We've said, focus on the front sight. Focus on the front sight. Focus on the front sight. That's what we say is because that's what a good instructor says. We're wrong. We should not say that. And I'll give you an example, right? So let's say the camera is your eye. Let me do this about like this, okay? So right now, if we were trying to hit whatever's in the background, would that be a good shot? Tell me yes or no. Type in your little comment. Would that be a good shot right there to try to hit something in the background, right? Most of you are probably going to say, no, Mike. It can't be a good shot, right? Because the front sight is way high, right? But you can focus on the front sight. Go ahead and look at it right now. Focus on the front sight. You're focusing on the front sight, though. So that's not the right answer. If we have to hit a shot that requires the alignment of the handgun, we need to be focusing on the front sight, right? Focusing on the rear sight, right? This is really hard to do, by the way. Okay, and then verifying that that front and rear sight alignment is proper in the area we're trying to hit, right? So when we talk about alignment, how much you have to do that is dictated by the shot, right? So the shot tells you what your aiming process needs to be, right? And then the speedometer, right, is what your sights are saying. So your sights are basically the speedometer as you're shooting, okay? Man,
Jared says that would be a good sight picture for 600 yards.
Maybe he's right. Yeah, good point. Jared is probably right. That would be good for 600 yards, holding over like that, though, right? Yeah. Oh, nice, Joe. I saw your comment. That's awesome, man. That's awesome, folks. So we talked about a lot of things. I know we're almost at 45 minutes. Rich, did we have any questions or discussion points? Oh, I see actually a good one coming up that I missed. Now, Dave, I know you're talking about red dot optics. I have a red dot that I brought for you to talk about that. But Rich, do we have anything that I missed that I need to answer?
No, sir.
Can I talk about red dots?
Please.
I'm going to show you two guns, by the way. I have to show these off. Full disclosure, yes, I'm sponsored by Wilson Combat. But I think this would be near and dear Phil Strader's heart because this happens to be a marriage between Wilson Combat and Sig Sauer. This is a Sig Wilson grip and slide module. This may very well be one of my new carry optics guns for next year. I know it's got a tall front and rear sight. This one is set up for more for a combination of defensive context, so I can use the front and rear sight to talk about defensive context. But anyways, there's my beautiful gun, a little skateboard tape on it. Anyways, enough about that. So in terms of the optics, so let's separate the iron sights versus optics discussion. One of the things about iron sights is, let me get both guns up here. When iron sights come into my vision, my field of view, I can automatically see the iron sights the entire time. Like I can see exactly the relationship to the front and rear sight. So as the iron sights come into my field of vision, I can immediately correct them based on what I see because I can see the iron sights in a handgun. Now, with an optic, the difference is because of the way the optic works, if I don't have the iron sights or maybe I can't see them yet, when the optic comes in front of my face, I cannot see the dot until it gets aligned in front of my face. Like, so if the dot is here, the gun is right here. I'll get directly in front of the camera. And the angle is left, right, up, or down. I can't find the dot. So what I would propose is that you learn and memorize the position where the dot is in the window and also watch where it comes from. So I'm going to give you a little exercise to build your presentation backwards. Two things. Number one, if you take your handgun that you previously knew how to aim with iron sights and you put a dot on it, I would submit to you, you still know how to aim the handgun. You have to trust yourself to put the handgun in front of your face and know because you have an optic on it, the gun might have to be slightly lower. But here's what I would propose to you, okay? I would propose taking the gun, finding your dot, then I would slowly start to unbuild your grip as you're going to holster. Then I would find your dot again. I would tell you to watch where your dot comes from. Now, there are some folks that want you to come muzzle high and bring the dot down in. That's not necessarily right or wrong, but I would ask you to think about this for a second. When you draw your handgun, is that a proper presentation? Or is that the most efficient presentation? No. So if you're bringing the muzzle up and down, that's probably not the most efficient presentation, right? When I draw the handgun, once I do my meat and drink, I drive the handgun straight to the target. You know, Phil and I used to call that straight lining in our class. So by straight lining, what happens is the gun is planed out right here. So I'm going to take the gun and move it after I finalize my grip like this, right? I want to prevent the gun from doing this because the dot is harder to find. I want to prevent the gun from doing this because the dot is harder to find. I don't want it to be left or right. I want it to get planed out and in front of my eye target line as quickly as possible. This will allow me to find the dot much faster than this or this. Now understand, no matter what, when I come off the target, I'm going to aim right at the camera, right? When I come off the target, okay, the dot has to go somewhere because I changed the angle that's directly in front of my eye to moving it somewhere else. So as I'm coming in front of my left eye, notice the angle of the gun. So you can imagine when the gun stops, the dot is coming from the top left hand side of the sight because I'm left eye dominant. For you righties, it might be more on the right side of the window. But what I do, I spend a lot of time watching how the dot comes into the position. And I'm also focusing on looking directly through the window of the optic, okay? But if you pay attention to your angle, man, I hate to get long-winded on that. It's really a critical component of the aiming process with an optic. Look through the window first, try to keep the angle the same, and you'll find your dot a lot faster. Now, if you still have backup iron sights or iron sights at all, look through the window, utilize those iron sights in your periphery to find your dot. But understand, though, we don't want to pull our vision back. That's the advantage of the dot. You keep your vision on the target. We don't ever look at the red dot. Was that long-winded, Rich? Jeez.
Sometimes it takes a little bit to explain some of these things. Melanie has a question. Mike says, could you address grip differences on a small pistol with limited space for hands?
I will, Melanie, I was hoping you would ask that question. Thank you so much. So I'm going to show you the two SIRT pistols, okay? The differences in grip size, you can see they're pretty different, right? Much smaller, much shorter, bigger, longer grip, okay? So my handgun, right hand high on the pistol grip, flag the thumb, get the hand in position. I have more grip inside my hands, so my palms are slightly farther apart, right? So let me take the other pistola, strong hand up the back of the grip, support hand in position. Once again, everything about the grip is the same. I just have less grip inside my hands, so my hands will naturally come together closer in the back of the gun, if that makes sense. So there's not a lot of fundamental difference in how I grip a small gun versus a large gun. It's just that a large gun is going to fill more of my hands up because the grip length and grip size is different than a smaller grip on the handgun Melanie. So hopefully that answers your question. But the pressure areas, they're all the same. Okay?
Jared says, on the draw from appendix, do you pay attention to your right elbow, i.e. chicken winging or tucked in tight? I find that it affects how quickly my gun gets upright.
So I won't do a full appendix draw, but I'll kind of demo for Jared's question. By the way, we'll talk about the drop process at length. Rich, I don't remember. I don't know if it's next week's show, maybe the following week's show. I'm going to cover the appendix draw in detail. But when I'm doing the appendix draw, my elbow's not chicken winging a lot, but it's chicken winging enough for me to grab the handgun. Sorry about the belly flash on live stream, but hey, it is what it is, right? If you watch my draw, slow it down. My elbow is out a little bit because this is the angle of the gun in my holster. So my elbow has to flare out a little bit. I personally, physically, I couldn't draw with my elbow back. That would hurt my wrist. So my elbow does flare out a little bit, but the second the gun comes out of the holster, I'm starting to turn the gun and present it right toward the turret. Remember that straight lining concept that we talked about earlier? So that's how I'm going to draw the handgun itself. Okay.
Cool. Let's see. Billy says, what red dot are you running on your P320 and why?
So I'm not tied to any red dot, by the way. I have, I really like the window of the Leopold Delta Point Pro. I like the size of the window. I have had a lot of these Delta Points rebuilt because the original electronics in them, they had a little battery micro component that was sliding around. But on the rebuilt ones, they are pretty much 100% across the board. Really held up well, and I have 7 or 8 of them. So I'm a big fan of the Leopold window. On a smaller carry gun right now, I'm testing and playing with the small holosun. This is the 550K X2 or some variant. This is their smaller compact version. I like them. I do have some of the bigger holosuns. They've been robust as well. I really like their 510 optics on my rifles and carbines. But that's a great optic as well. But for me, I'm a big fan of the 320s. And, I'm not sure if you can see on the video, the window size on the 320 is fantastic. Probably find the dot. Oh, there's the dot. All right. That's so hard to do. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. I haven't tried the larger dot yet, by the way.
Got 2 good questions, Mike. Walt says, is there any data to support that during a close range encounter, one may have a natural tendency to index as opposed to looking for sight alignment? And if so, what drills can you recommend to help develop good draw and index mechanics to increase accuracy without acquiring sights?
Data, I don't know. That's a great question, Walt. I don't know. I don't know how we would pool that data. Like, I think the natural human reaction is to look at the threat, probably not to find the front sight. I know in previous studies and folks tried to, they tried to use physiology to explain the fact that you can't focus on the front sight under stress. I don't think that's true. I give you a great story. When I was a young police officer, I did not get into shooting, but my beat partner got into a shooting. He was at a Taco Bell, had just got maybe some burritos or whatever else. Dude, he's walking out one door. Guy walks in the other door, starts to an armed robbery, waving a gun around. He decides to shoot the guy. Guy didn't comply right away or whatever else. Had to take a very precise shot, maybe 12, 13, 14 yards. This guy was a competitive shooter. He shot PPC, and he said, Mike, I remember the front sight and the rear sight notch as clearly as I could possibly describe it to you. Guess what? He could focus on the front sight. He was a competitive shooter. He practiced focusing on the front sight. As to data that indicates that folks will tend to present an index, maybe that's true, but here's the way I teach to my students and believe it. The more times I take this handgun and present it as fast as I can, and then aim the handgun with the dot of the sights in training, that's teaching me the mechanical position of an aimed gun. Meaning I can feel this is aimed, that's not. So in other words, you could take the optic off, I could turn it off, I could take the iron sights and have just a slide at distance, probably 15, 20 yards, and present it and boom, boom, and fire the shots. Why? Because I know exactly what the position of the final aimed grip is. I know what it feels like. I've memorized that. And if you're doing that in your training drills, I like to say that the sights are simply an indicator that teaches you how to present the handgun and keep it aligned or aimed, right? So that said, if under some stress you have less visual acuity, it's darker. Maybe you didn't take the time to verify perfect sight alignment or any sight alignment if you didn't need it, which, by the way, you won't in most. If you look at all the civilian statistics we have, they almost all require no sight alignment. You could have a gun with no sights on it and win those fights because they're so close, right? When I'm talking about aiming the handgun, it's like pointing your finger. I don't need to have sights on my finger to point at you. If you all take your fingers right now, whatever you're watching this on, point it at me. You don't need sights on your finger to aim your finger, right? But the sights do verify the alignment process and then teach you the extended position or single-handed positions. So under some stress, maybe if you don't visually verify and you, in your turn, index under some stress and speed, I would say that if you've trained, you'll still present the handgun to the same spot.
Mike, I know we got 83 viewers still watching us live, and we've been on here for an hour, but I still have two really good questions I'd like to hit you up with.
Yep.
This one comes from, let's see who this gentleman was here. Roger Vasquez says, tighter grip on the firing hand or support hand, or is it equal?
Good question, Roger. I would describe my grip as equal. I think naturally, the real truth is most of us are probably gripping a little stronger with our strong hand because it's our strong hand, the gun's in that hand. But I spent a lot of time driving the palms together and locking my hands. So when I grip, it's like if you were to grab a bar, like with both hands very quick, like this, I would grab the bar equally. Like I wouldn't grab really strong with my right hand, really loose with my support hand. If I grabbed another bar, maybe a rope you need to climb, I'll grab it very hard with both hands. I'm doing the same. I feel the same pressure in my hands with the handgun. So I would like to describe it as pretty much equal across the board. And the angles and the placement and how I'm putting the pressure on the gun is the real secret, by the way.
Okay, man. Mr. Flores says, what MOA dot are you running, and is there a specific one you like?
So this is the 2.5. I think the Delta Point Pro is a 2.5. I believe they also offer the 5-minute dot. I'm not positive about that. Someone chime in if you have information. I don't own that Delta Point Pro. I think that's actually a newer model. I am going to get one and try it. I like the small, precise dots, but I will tell you a lot of really top-level dudes, if you talk to Max Michel, and I don't know if JJ mirrors this, guys that shoot a lot of carry optics, they tend to find the bigger dot a little bit more robust in terms of being able to find it fast and shoot fast. So I would say that in experimenting, I would be surprised if I don't end up liking a 3, 4, 5 maybe minute dot more than I like a 2.5 minute dot, for example.
Okay. Eric says, seems likely people would be more inclined to initially index the gun the closer the threat. Is that you?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. So, right. So let's talk about aiming, right? At this distance, am I aiming at you? If you're the threat, yes, you can see it. You can see the sights, right? You can see that I'm aiming, right? But at this same distance, do I need the sights to aim, right? So I can point the gun and I know it's aimed right there. I didn't see the sights at all. I'm still looking at the camera, right? I don't need the sights to aim. If you were contact distance, however, okay, am I aiming the handgun? No, I'm not aiming. I'm indexing, but I'm using a verification method that allows me to do that. But, and actually, we're going to talk about distance considerations next week. They may look like this. At distance, hard shot, I'm aiming, right? I'm indexing. But, yes, to answer your question, Eric, I completely agree. It's like pointing your finger. I don't know if that's indexing, but I'm still verifying the alignment of my finger, left, right, up, or down. I don't need sights on my finger. Now, farther away, well, maybe now I need to look at the tip of my finger compared to the knuckle of my finger to aim it, just like the tip of the handgun, the front sight compared to the rear sight notch, if that makes sense. Okay.
MOA dots. Can you see it?
Go ahead, buddy. Say it again.
Yeah, you can see Phil Strader's comment there on the.
Yeah, he's talking about 6. I completely agree. I would say 5 to 6 would probably be perfect. And yeah, I like the smaller screen. This particular optic has the ability to turn. The Holosun has the circle and the center, or you can just turn the circle on, or you can just turn the center. I have the circle and the center on. Let me see if I can actually show you this. Wait, I need to practice this more. There it is. Right. Hard to do that. You can see the center circle. But that big, robust dot allows me to see the circle very, very quickly. But I can use that little circle if I need to as well. Okay.
I have no other questions, Mike.
No other questions. All right, folks. All right, we are at 1 hour. This is one of my favorite shows. I hope if you're watching this through today or later on YouTube that you give it a share. These are they're big, long shows. I know we do some social interaction. So if you're one of those folks on YouTube or whatever, like, I wish you'd edit it down and I don't want to hear you commenting. Well, it's a live stream show. For me not to talk to all the live viewers would be completely foolish. So if you're on live right now, thank you. You're the ones we're trying to get to, the folks we're trying to reach, the folks we're trying to teach, and we're doing it 100% for free. No obligation, no nothing. Just join us and enjoy the show and post some good questions. I appreciate some of you attending, except for Phil Strader. Hopefully he'll never attend another live show again. If you're driving to work, hopefully you wreck your car. I really hope you do. And let me close it out real quick. If you enjoy this, please do me a favor and share it on whatever mode you're watching it on. There are a lot of tools here. There's only part of the puzzle. If you get on that show notes area and click those links, if you want to get a challenge coin, click the first one. Second one down, I'm not sure what Rich put on it. Probably goes to some of the defensive programs. You can also go to my website and learn everything you want to learn about me if you don't know who I am on MikeSeeklander.com. Of course, those are all links in the show. Next week's show, we're talking distance considerations. It's a really good show because one of the things that I find people don't know is when to extend the handgun, when to compress the handgun, and how to compress a handgun. So I wanted to teach that in a live stream show. I'll have my Bob in here, which is my body opponent bag. We'll maybe talk about some weapon striking and stuff, some unique material, I believe. You will enjoy it, and that's it, folks. That's all I have. Mr. Rich Brown, why don't you tell them a little bit about Friday's show? What do you have coming up on Friday, man?
Friday, I'm joined by my good friend Mike Bruce, I believe. I'm going to check the calendar, but yeah, join us at American Warrior Society's Facebook page for another live show, and we're going to talk about strength. My friend Mike held the world's strongest neck title for a long time, and he's going to talk about why in combatives it's important to have a very strong neck.
Man, I'd be interested to know if he has one of those little iron, what do they call iron neck thing? The things you put on your head.
Yeah, he's sponsored by them. Yeah, he'll have that product on there. He has a
I have
signature
one of those.
series.
I love it.
Yeah.
After every BJJ session, I come home and I put that sucker in my head and do my little neck exercises. So I completely agree. So, hey, also before we get off here, I know Chris, you're on Schmid with IDPA. Please do me a favor. Send me a text. Or I'll send you Rich's number as well. Maybe if we could do a dual deal on this and go live on IDPA page, I think the members would love that. Maybe during the defensive cycle, excuse me. But if not, next month is all competition cycle stuff. So please let me know if you're interested in that. We'll do that. So, all right, Rich. Any last questions or comments before we jump off here?
Nope. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I really appreciate it.
All right, folks. Thank you so much. And until then, train hard.